Hello there, it's Josh here from Racing to Profit, recording this at lunchtime on Monday, the 23rd of August. I haven't recorded a video for a little while, so I thought I would try and pull together something of use. I hope you had a great weekend. I'm going to focus on a couple of things. I'm going to jump to Sandown and the Sunday series, which was obviously yesterday. On Sunday, as I'm recording this, I'm going to flag a couple of horses for the notebook and actually talk over the replay of one race and how the kind of pace dictated the result and whether or not we can learn anything from that particular contest. And then I'm going to jump over to horse race space and flag 3 or 4 horses to follow using hot form. So I'll try and whiz through as quickly as I can. If you're watching this on YouTube, remember you can click the little cog in the bottom right hand corner and you can speed me up. You can put the playback speed at 1.25 or 1.5, and I think I still sound relatively normal if I am speaking at too slow a pace for you. So yeah, where are we going to start? In front of you with some notes from my members post on Sunday, which I pulled together the Saturday lunchtime. These were just some flat pointers and thoughts for my readers to flick through, absorb, use, ignore as they please. And there might be something of use here for you as well moving forwards if you so wish. The first race I was more focused on the trainer. It was a competitive nursery handicap. His horse didn't particularly run well, but Harry Eustace looks like potentially a trainer worth noting in the next few days, mainly because his kind of last 5 runs before Sunday had all placed. 80% of rivals beat them within those races and those horses. Which obviously means they're all generally finishing nearer the first or nearer the front of the pack than near the back, which is always a positive. And he's done well with his handicappers since he took over from James, who I assume is his dad or a relative anyway, a few months ago. So he has clearly started his training career pretty well and looks to be a young trainer on the up, worth keeping an eye on, as is Tom Ward. And maybe I'll jump to that 6:45 now pretty quick. So yeah, Harry Eustace deserves a change of luck, so maybe note him down as a trainer in form. I'm not quite sure how many entries he's got over the next week or two, but if you like using kind of trainer form and hot form, and or trainers in hot form I should say, and who may be about to burst into life, Harry Eustace may be just one of those. Tom Ward is another. The ex-assistant to Richard Hannon has made a flying start to his training career, really. Only about 30 horses in his yard, has already had 25 plus winners, I think, from those runners this season. I highlighted his Farazi Lane, who thankfully, I think it was about 17-2 when I was typing these up, maybe 7/8 in the morning, went off 13-2, and bolted up under Tom Marquand, which was the hope and expectation, the way in with flagging this particular horse in this race. Like I said, was the yard form of Tom Ward, and again, most of his runners look like they could be worth a closer look. He clearly knows the time of day and clearly learnt a lot while at the Hannon establishment. I should just focus on him quickly, if anything, just to ram home in my own head, and maybe yours if you so please, and if you like solving the puzzles, some of those things that we can look for. It was the 6:45. Maybe let me just jump over to, I'm in Gigi's gold here. What did I highlight about this horse? So you could see here the kind of way in was this yard form indicator here, the 14 and the 30, indicating the yard were in form. Out of all the horses in this race, he was arguably, well, the yard was in some of the better form compared to some of the others. Let me just get rid of my face. You've probably seen enough of that, so we can see the fuller screen in front. And yes, so what did I want to highlight about him? He was 3, he was unexposed. What interested me most was the fact that, the fact that he was in form a couple of starts ago, so he bolted up in this Sandown race. So at his base, we've got a flat horse here who's unexposed, who I think there may be more to come. My way in was the yard form, and and then the fact that he had course form, as you can see here, bit of cut. 3-year-old only handicap, class 3, bolted up here. There had been a winner in behind. Some of his other races and performances had produced subsequent winners also. That was a career best RPR, a 91 off a mark of 80. And if you've watched any of my previous videos where I talk about horses and other such things, I do use those RPRs as a sort of guide to get a grip on whether a horse may be well handicapped and more to come, as I do on hot form, which is what I'm going to flag a little bit later on. So yes, he had in first-time cheek pieces, which clearly looked like they made a difference. Tracked the lead, as I always like horses that can track the pace or race prominently. Ideally, if I think the race, if that's going to be a benefit to them, especially when they've got a top jockey on like Tom Marquand. And yeah, so he bolted up there over 7 furlongs, stayed on strongly. You can watch that back. He then ran at Goodwood, went up to a class 2. You can watch that back also if you wanted, but he had an excuse. He was slowly into stride. He was always towards the rear, which is obviously never the place to be around Goodwood. It was fairly soft that day. It's obviously quite an idiosyncratic track. Maybe he didn't handle it either. You can read the comments there. Barge by arrival over a furlong out made no impression. You could look at that performance and go, was that an excuse? Did he have a good excuse for that bad run? In my mind, he did. Then it's all about price, I suppose. Now he returned here 22 days later. He was doing a few things different. He was firstly dropping 2 classes. So he was dropping below the class that he'd bolted up in there, which caught my eye. He was into an all-age handicap for the first time, so 3-year-olds and older. That, of course, meant he was getting a bit of weight as well, the weight for age allowance, which always makes a little bit of a difference. You know, you can see here, carried the same actual weight on his back as the Ian Williams horse, but his rated £6 superior to him. So getting that £6, or in effect should be carrying 6 more. If he was an older horse, and if these 3-year-olds are developing, that can obviously be beneficial to them. So he was racing into this all-age handicap, and like I said, had some excuses in my head for the last few runs, and he was doing something different. He was going up to a furlong. Now that was a reason for why he might step forward again, for why he might transform again in terms of being ahead of his handicap mark. He, like I said, he powered home over that 7 furlongs there. You could look at some of his breeding as well, which you could see he was related, or his dam was related to a few stayers as well, which made me think that this 8 furlong trip might be beneficial and a reason for further improvement. And you can watch that race back, and he absolutely hacked up. You can obviously then assess some of the opposition and whether you think they're well handicapped or not, and what questions they may have. There were 5 places to aim at in this race, or 4, or was 5 with a few bookmakers, I think. And then you had the likes of the pace map and various different other things. So I'm only saying that briefly to highlight. Sorry, let me just sort the draw, which would have been on the inside. He was up here. There wasn't too much pace on paper, so I thought Tom may be able to get out and slot in if he wanted, which is exactly what he did from that wide enough draw. So that's just an example of kind of what I looked at and what I saw and what I highlighted, which is what I kind of chatted about in these notes here, but just bringing to life, I suppose, some of my thinking when looking at that particular race and that particular horse, and some of the different ideas that you could try and include in any analysis or puzzle solving endeavours if you so wish. But that's enough on Farazi Lane, who still may be open to even more progress over that distance, and could be a 3-year-old handicapper to keep on side. I'm not sure I'd necessarily want to be opposing him with too much confidence on his next couple of starts, because he still looked like he was well ahead of his mark. Now, what did I want to say? I want to jump back to a race that was earlier on in the card, the 1 mile 6 furlong staying handicap here. I found a couple of horses vis-a-vis who will still remain in the notebook. Why is he in my particular notebook? He's quite lightly raced. You'll see by this profile he usually has 2 runs and then has to have a break. So he's clearly been fragile. I'm hoping he will hit the race course again. He was 4th in the Cesarewitch here back in October 18 under SDS off a mark of 90. He came into this race here off 77. He might get dropped a couple more pounds. If you watch that Ascot run back, it was very eye-catching. I think it caught the eye of plenty of people, including most of the ITV team on the Sunday Series broadcast. Tendley handled, it was his first run, 273 days. He may well have surprised connections with quite well how well he ran, I think. And yeah, so he moved there like a well-handicapped horse, as he did in this Sandown race. But I do not think the pace of the race suited at all, and it turned into a bit of a dawdle. But I will just watch back over the replay in a moment. And Cormier was also in completely the wrong position. But this is a horse for the notebook. He's lightly raised, he's well handicapped. Can they keep him sound? Because like I said, against some of this form down here, a mark in the mid-70s is starting to look very exploitable, and he's moved and tanked through those last 2 races like a well-handicapped horse. So he's definitely got a 14 furlong handicap at class 4 level in him, without a doubt. Whether or not he goes under the radar, maybe this run here might mean he goes under the radar, and we will just watch back this particular video clip. So this is another approach obviously you can take to finding notebook horses, is looking at replays and looking back at certain different races and trying to work out numerous things, really, whether the draw was an advantage or disadvantage to certain horses, whether how the race panned out was an advantage or disadvantage to certain horses as well. Now, if we go through this on the Sunday Series, when you watched it, they now have the furlong splits in the top left-hand corner. This is the replay from Racing TV, but they basically went very, very slow. Is the overall message to take from this. They absolutely dawdled here on the front. You can see the winner here, William Buick, wanting to slot in. Vis-a-vis here, he's kind of 3 or 4 off the rail, and Rab Havlin never manages to get him in. You can see how wide he is there. Buick eventually gets his, you can see there, going downhill, not having to use too much energy. He's put his horse forward and then to slot him in, because again he was a bit wide. Vis-a-vis here, he's wide, he's slightly lit up through the race, but you can see how a lot of these jockeys, if you look at their hands, the horses are wanting to go a bit quicker and they are not going any pace at all. Vis-a-vis back here, now in a slowly run race, when it turns into a dash, you generally want to be nearer the front. Cormier, who kind of flashes into 3rd, is right out the back, not one of SDS's finest rides, I don't think. Let me just roll this on a bit further. So they're going to start swinging for home here. It's yet to kind of race, is yet to develop. They're still not going very quick at all. Lots of the jockeys are still standing still and not really moving. For a 1 mile 6 race, there's not really a big gap between many of the runners. Now they're starting to turn for home, and they're starting to get a bit agitated here. But again, you can see if I stop this here, they're quite tightly packed, and that's another indication of the fact they haven't gone too quickly. And now in this scenario, you're looking at the replay thinking, who is going to have the quickest change of gear? Which horse's legs can move the fastest in a short space of time, and to try and get a gap? Are some of these horses who actually stay a lot further going to be disadvantaged because they simply do not have that same change of gear? And I think that's very much applicable to Vis-a-Vis for the Neil Mulholland team. You can see he loomed and travelled into it rather well on the outside here. He's still not really asked him, Rab, and now he's asking, well, now he starts to get after him. They're just starting to wind it up a bit. Will's now getting really kicked in. I think the best ride on the day is won it. Cormier is still tanking at the back here, but these horses are quickening, and he's having to quicken from much further back. Vis-a-Vis here doesn't have the change of pace. You know, within a furlong or half a furlong, he's gone from looking like he's going to loom past the lot of them, sat about half a length off the Buick horse, and now he's back here. To me, I think that indicates he just lacked a change of gear. He would have either wanted them to have gone a lot quicker, or they maybe should have made more use of him. And of course, like I said, he was kept a bit wide also. You've got Cormier, who looks like he's going to absolutely fly down here. He's had to use a lot of energy to get into this position. He carries his head a bit funny, which I hadn't noticed before. I'm not quite sure if that was something to do with the track or he was looking around at something. I'm not quite sure, but he's a multiple winner who still looks well handicapped. But William Buick has been able to get a kick, and he's been able to stay there and been in the right spot. Cormier's flown home. And look at Vis-a-Vis, he didn't drop right out the back of the telly there. He did stay on again towards the line. Andrea's horse here under Roger Varian, he took a while to get going. He looks like another one who may well have wanted a faster, stronger pace. You can see he starts to fly here. But like I said, Buick in one of the best positions. These horses have had to use a lot of energy to close, whereas the winner's been able to use that energy to kick away from near the front end. So that is an interesting little race and a good example, I think, of pace and how it can dictate and influence the result. Cormier probably won't be missed in the market next time either. That was rather eye-catching, but he was still running there as if he's well handicapped. He's been giving a Racing Post rating of 86, which was above that mark of 79, and actually the best RPR he's posted on the flat so far this season. But he won a couple here over 1 mile 4. I don't think Stamina did him there, but maybe a more strongly run 1 mile 4 or made more use of and given a bit more of a prominent ride. But that horse is clearly well ahead, I think, still from a mark of 79. He's running like he's got room to move within that particular handicap mark. I suppose you could mark up Sovereign Duke in the sense that he was held up and made headway, and that indicates he has a change of gears and is tactically versatile. He might be worth keeping an eye on as well. I don't think that race panned out for the favourite on this particular occasion either. You can watch it again, yeah, but he didn't get a clear run, lost positions 3 out. They went very slow, and then it turned into a bit of a dash. He seemed to get caught and tapped for toe. Certainly Vis-a-Vis did. He just could not respond at that speed at all, or being asked to sprint from a kind of walk as they crawled around. So he needs a much stronger pace. Hopefully not an indication that he's got an issue again. We'll keep everything crossed he actually makes a racecourse appearance within the next month or two, and that they can actually get a good few runs into him. He handles softer ground. Maybe they'll pop him back over hurdles one day as well, but I would have thought they would want to exploit this particular handicap mark. So yeah, without any luck, I said something interesting there. Yeah, that's an example of a race run at a crawl that turned into a dash, and how certain horses were at a disadvantage because of their track position when the jockeys near the front started to put their foot on the gas. And that's one idea, I suppose, of watching replays and how you can try and find horses to follow in that scenario. Another one is to use hot form, and I've talked about hot form before. I'm going to jump over to horse race base. We've got this research tab here. We have this, where is it, hot and cold races here. Now, hot form, I could bring my face back for you poor souls. Hot form is useful. I generally like to focus on unexposed horses still, because your basis is they're going to improve and there could be more to come one day, which is never a bad starting point with any horse or any handicapper. But any race we look at, we're trying to make an assessment of whether or not we think the horse has the ability to compete, whether or not we think they're well handicapped. Now, one of the ways to do that is to assess the level of opposition they've been facing, and whether they've been running in races which have a lot of unexposed horses in them and or well handicapped horses in them. And we know that because then when those horses run on their next start, the next 2 or 3 starts, a few of them will win. That indicates that that race has some depth to it, and that the horse we might be looking at today or might be wanting to track did well because they were in and around a lot of other well handicapped and in-form horses. B, if the trainer places them well, may be able to find races which are not that competitive. And it just gives you another layer onto an assessment of the ability of the horse you're looking at on any one day or any particular race. Of course, in many races you can have various different hot form lines crossing over, but for me it's a useful way to find horses to track and to help give context to their performance and try and place that performance and ability within today's race if you're looking at it in that way. So Yeah, hot and cold races. This is in Horse Race Base. I've been badgering Matt over at GG's to create a similar tool within GG's Gold also, which I think is on his long list of modifications to do. That's an aside. This is a good way to research such things. So I'm looking at hot form. This is races that have worked out well. I don't really want to look whether or not they're running today because I haven't really looked, and I would probably miss them and that would be painful viewing. I can look at their next couple of runs. I'm going to just look for the last 30 days in this example. I did have a flick through earlier just so I could whiz through quickly, or as quickly as I can. Handicaps I'm going to focus on. Obviously you can look at maidens, you can look at all sorts of different race types and everything else, and I'm going to focus on the flat, given we are still in the main bulk of the flat season, although my head post York will slowly now start to turn towards the winter jumpers, especially on the research front. But let's have a look here. So this is organised in races which are working out particularly well, with plenty of winners here near the top. So you can obviously flick through these different races and try and find horses which have not run as yet. That's what I quite like to do. This is probably not a good example. It would have been good to have jumped on one of these horses. Well, see, you know, the second, third, fourth have all won on their next starts. Ideally, you could, or it's an example of how this could work, you could have come to this race when only two of these had won. Then you might have been tracking a couple of these other horses and they'd have both won on their next start. And you can see there some half decent prices as well. So that's not a good example in terms of trying to find horses to track for the future, but it is in terms of the general idea. There was a race on the 26th at no, where am I looking at? Sorry, Nottingham. There's a couple of examples. Yeah, so this 29th of the 7th, if I click on that. Now hopefully you can see why this particular race is an example of one we may want to follow. So this was a 3-year-old and up handicap. Roman Mist has won twice since. So he won this Nottingham handicap here, then bolted up, so won off 68, since actually won comfortably off 81. That would indicate this horse was fairly well handicapped, and horses in behind him that got fairly close, or she I should say, they were in behind her and got fairly close to her, or chased her home, may indicate that they were rather unlucky and bumped into a horse that may well have had at least £20 in hand by the look of it. And you're not going to always bump into such horses like that. So prize fighting, I would like to, well, I would hope it looks like a filly or horse worth tracking, sorry. Dartington, there's even more substance. So the winner was clearly well handicapped, and the third looks like at least was in form, lightly raced, so we are in and around lightly raced unexposed horses. Ran a decent race here at Salisbury up to 1 mile 2, good. Ran another decent race, and then that didn't confirm that until running in this Brighton race, was sent off the favourite. But that's just an example of bumped into some here, may well have bumped into some more here again, or a more competitive race, and then the trainer has managed to place them in a less competitive race, having posted some decent level of performance as indicated by that hot form at Nottingham. And then, of course, we've got prize fighting and these other ones that haven't run here. So by all means, pause this video and note down some of these other races, because this looks like a Class 5 3-year-old and upwards handicap that will have more depth than some Class 5 handicaps have. But I'm going to focus on prize fighting for the purpose of this video. Now, whether or not this horse actually wants to win is the question. I have not as yet gone back and watched the video replays of this to see if there's an attitude problem in the finish. Only had 9 runs though. It's far too early to be casting aspersions on such things. Lots of seconds, which can be a positive. If they keep coming second and don't go through with it, that can obviously lead to being a negative. But you had this Nottingham second one here, 8.5 furlongs, held up in touch, ridden over 2 furlong out, kept on final furlong, no chance with winner. Well, as we saw, the winner had kind of 15 to 20 pounds in hand and hasn't stopped winning yet. This horse has yet to run since 29th of July. hopefully Clive Cox will be able to find something for his gelding which is nowhere near as competitive as that particular last race, and we shall see how well he does on his next start. But that was a class 3 he ran in before, which looked to be a bit out of his depth. And yeah, you can see that he split 2 subsequent winners, so that is decent level of form for the grade, and he won't always bump into a race that competitive. He's still lightly raced. Connections have clearly still yet to find the key with him, but surely based on some of that evidence it's only a matter of time. You can see how he's can be held up and more patiently ridden, so it might be that he wants a really strong pace. It could be they're still teaching this horse how to settle, still how to drop their head, and once he learns how to be a racehorse properly, they might be able to be more aggressive or try and lead. They're all the different things these trainers and connections will be thinking about on this horse's journey as they mature and they develop, but using that hot form, as I said, as some kind of guide as to the level of ability, or whether or not they have any ability, and whether or not they can find less competitive races moving forward, and to get a grip on whether that handicap mark of 71 is about right or not. Like I said, you can go back and look at some of their Racing Post ratings as well if you wanted, and see what figure was posted against that. But given what these two horses have done that they split, it may indicate that 71 is workable given how close and in and around those winners he got to. So that's an example of that, and hopefully explains some of my thinking there. There was another race at Nottingham on the 3rd that I just want to come down here. So you can see here, this is a 3-year-old only handicap, all 3-year-olds generally still growing, maturing. But you'll see that all 3, bar the 3rd horse here for Owen Burries, they've all run since, and 2 of them haven't, but these 3 have all won since. So again, they were in form, they were progressive, they were clearly well handicapped and ahead of their mark. This looks like a little competitive little 5-runner race, and there's 2 horses here, the 3rd and Impeller in 5th, who have yet to run since, but may not race in such a competitive field like this, even though it's only 5 runs, or may not come up against so many well handicapped horses. It might be a question of when one of these 2 then runs in a all-age handicap, so for 3-year-olds and older, up against a load of more exposed, badly handicapped 4, 5, 6-year-olds as an example, and they may be able to exploit this particular mark. So this is a race, and those 2 horses you may wish to pause this video and note down as another example. Like I said, lightly raced. Now this one has shown the ability to win before. Ran over 6 furlongs here. Edge left, bump start, track leaders. They were fairly aggressive with this one. Jim managed to get out. That was only off 77. This Foss last race then didn't win, held up towards rear, smooth progress before, pushed along, approaching 2 furlongs out, ridden in 3rd, unable to quicken, but kept on 1 pace. Now I haven't watched that back. That may indicate they didn't go very quick. He may not have been in a great position. The lows at the front may have gone really slow and then sprinted. He got a bit outpaced but stayed on again. And the same thing may have happened in this Nottingham race. 5 runners, tactical enough, dwelt up, held up, close 4 out, pushed along, briefly challenged, outpaced by leaders over 1 furlong out. So again, horses quickening. Let me get rid of that. Horses quickening off a slow pace. So that's about tactics and how races have been run. Given that performance, given the fact that 3 have come out of that and already won on their next start, we could make an assumption that a mark of 80 still may be fairly workable, and it might just be a case that this horse needs a bigger field, stronger pace, and when he gets that scenario, may well transform again and add another win to the board. So he may be a horse to keep an eye on as well. And then we've got Impeller, who was a bit further back, maybe not so good, I'm not quite sure, beaten 12.7 lengths. Again, maybe a stronger pace, I'm not quite sure. He won at Leicester by a neck in the Class 5. Now, Leicester's obviously a stiffer track. Maybe this horse is now worth another go back at 7 furlongs. That's not impossible. Again, only had 11 runs on the flat. Maybe he was outclassed, but, he has bumped into kind of 4 well handicapped horses that were in form also, and you can see they're outpaced. he looks like, without watching this back and just going off these in-running comments, may have just been simply asked to go out of his comfort zone too soon. So he's been asked to sprint much earlier than is ideal, and because he's having to use more energy than ideal, he just hasn't had any energy left for the final 2 furlongs into one, and that's why he's faded. And actually, that losing distance may look a lot worse than the actual performance was in reality. And any horse being asked to travel out of their comfort zone sooner than ideal, an inefficient use of energy, they will use up energy in the wrong place and then fade. And again, that's all about pace of race and how races are run and so on. So that's interesting enough. He clearly has ability, given this Leicester win, and maybe this performance means next time he hits the racetrack, he will be undervalued and may go off a bigger price or be put on a bigger price than he should be. So he might be one that's still worth keeping an eye on, I think, for those various reasons. I'm ticking around a half an hour, which is really where I should leave it. Maybe I will find one more. This Yarmouth race, I think, on the 27th of the 7th. What did I want to flag here? Or was there anything I want to flag here? No, not necessarily. There's been a couple of winners come out of this, and it's quite low grade actually. I'm not quite sure why I'm focusing on that one. Get me have another second to look at my notes. Yes, sorry, maybe this one down here, 27th. Yeah, it probably was. Yes, so this is another example, 3-year-old plus, fairly small field, but Summer's Night is ran here at Yarmouth, won a Class 5, then won a Class 4, then did get pitched into a Class 2, but that was some substance to that form. The second ran second in that Yarmouth race, went into a Class 4 and won there 3-1 at Chelmsford. So that was an indication of a couple of horses that still had room within their handicap marks. Double the Trouble has since run at Chelmsford as well in a Class 5 and come second, which wasn't a bad performance. Obviously Palladium is yet to run, and given what those three, or especially the front two, have done since, may be an indication, especially given that fairly lightly raced also, yet to do it on the flat as such. Kept on. You can look at some of those. That was Nicky Henderson, first run back on the flat after having been hurdling a while. May take a little while to get over. Get back used to racing on the flat. 1 mile 6. Does this horse want 2 miles on the flat? Has run in on the flat before for Martin Mead. And kept on same pace, so very unexposed over 2 miles. So it'll be interesting if Nicky Henderson keeps this one to the flat and puts them back up in trip, because they quite are unexposed on the flat. That run and that performance and what those horses have done in front, only beaten 2.2 lengths, may indicate there could be weaker Class 5s to be found. That there's room within this handicap mark, and you might be looking for the horse to do something different for a reason for why they then may step forward again and hit the winner's board. And that something different may well be taking a step up in trip to 2 miles, or wanting a stronger pace, for example, over that sort of distance. So that might be another one, Palladium, to keep an eye on. So I think I've mentioned 3 or 4 horses there that you can add to your hot form notebooks that are all lightly raced and unexposed within their conditions and codes, so naturally should have more to come at some point, and have all run in races which are starting to work out well, indicating they have some ability. They may be ahead of their handicap marks, and if their trainers place them well in the weeks ahead, may be able to find something less competitive than those races that they're running. But that's an example of how you can use hot form and those kind of races to get a grip on what's a horse achieved and what they may be able to go on and do, depending on the races they run in the future. Because of course there are some races you get which are 0 from 15, 0 from 20, and they didn't take much winning. And if you've got a horse coming from a race like that into a race from other horses that have been running in other races that are, say, 7 from 20 or 5 from 8 or whatever, that would indicate, in my head, preference for the horse that's been running in more competitive races that have been producing more winners, indicating they were in and around better handicapped horses, better informed horses, and so on. So that's 33 minutes, which should be long enough for these videos, I think. hopefully there I have said something throughout that little piece that is interesting and useful, both looking back at some of that Sandown, those Sandown races, and looking at some of the hot form here. I have flicked through a fair few of these races, and those are the ones I wanted to highlight in terms of form to keep an eye on. But yeah, I think with that said, I will leave it there. But if you do have a horse race base account, do have a play around with those hot and cold race tools. If you've got a GG's Gold account, on any given race day, you get access. If you're a free registered user, you get access to various different tools every day, including I think five full race cards. So you can, for example, I'm not quite sure what the free races of the day are today, but within any race you've got kind of inbuilt hot form down here, the kind of then what feature, so you can flick through some of those and look at some of those races and click on the results and see how they've worked out, and so on and so forth. And of course, Matt within GG's has a tools set as well, which are hot form. Reports. Let me just click on that. And again, that's a useful way. There's a hot form report here. Bit similar, more live and in play day to day. You can look at today, tomorrow. You can filter that by various different things and look at different hot form races, and that's a report that's always worth a little look also. And you can see there some of those hot form races and different things as those races are progressing. But yes, with that said, I should say finally, I think at the races which I don't really use their race cards, they have hot form features as well, and so on and so forth. So yeah, if you don't use hot form either for notebook purposes or part of your punting puzzle or analysis, I would consider it as one aspect. As always, there's no silver bullet in this game, but it's one aspect which can help bring alive a race and the horse's ability, as I've said before. But I'm starting to repeat myself, aren't I, as I can do. So with that said, as I tick around to 36 minutes, if you've liked the video, click like, click subscribe if you're watching on YouTube so you get alerted to future videos. If you've any questions, anything you may want me to do a video on in the future, do shout below in the comments, and yeah, ask any questions, anything else you please. But with that said, this is Josh from Racing to Profit saying thanks for watching, have a great week, and until the next time, bye for now.